Imagine for a moment that you receive a desperate call from someone you love more than anything in the world, your own mother. She's crying, pleading for your help, and her voice trembles with fear you've never heard before. But instead of rushing to her side or calling for help, you hesitate. You say no. You turn away. You convince yourself that it's not your problem, that you can't handle it, or maybe that it's better to stay out of whatever darkness she's trapped in. Now, imagine the crushing weight of regret that comes with that refusal, the kind that never lets go, the kind that haunts every thought, every breath, every silent moment. This is not just a story about a mother and daughter. It's a raw, painful journey into trust, denial, and the unimaginable consequences of a single choice. You might be wondering why someone would say no when their own mom is begging for help, or what terrifying situation could have pushed her to that breaking point. That's exactly what you're going to discover here. You clicked on this video because you want answers. You want to understand how a moment that could have saved everything ended up changing lives forever. So stay with me, because the truth you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about family, fear, and forgiveness. This story is about people like you and me. People who face impossible decisions in moments of crisis, caught between love and fear, hope and despair. It's about a daughter, young but strong, who found herself staring into the abyss of her mother's pain and made a choice that would haunt her forever. And it's about that mother, whose pleas for help were more than just words. They were a desperate cry for salvation from a nightmare no one wanted to face. As we unravel what happened, you'll start to see how the invisible threads of trust, guilt, and regret pull at the very fabric of this family's life. You'll understand the complex emotions that trap us when those we care about fall into darkness, and how sometimes the hardest thing to do is to say yes when everything inside screams no. I want you to think about your own relationships, your own moments of doubt, and the times when you looked away instead of stepping in. This story isn't just theirs. It's a reflection of all of us. Maybe you've been in a place where you didn't know what to do, or maybe you've wondered what might happen if you chose differently. As you listen, I'll guide you through the twists and turns of this haunting tale, but I'll also ask you to face something difficult. What would you do if the person you loved most in the world was begging for help, and the only thing standing between you and their salvation was a single word, yes or no? I promise, by the end of this video, you'll have the answer you came for. You'll understand why she said no, what it cost her, and why that moment of refusal shattered everything. But I won't give it all away now. The beginning itself will grip you with emotions you didn't expect and questions that won't let go. You'll meet the key players, this mother and daughter, their world, their secrets, and feel the tension build as the truth starts to unfold. You'll see how a seemingly simple decision became the crossroads between hope and tragedy, and you'll find yourself caught in the struggle of whether forgiveness is even possible when trust is broken so deeply. So, buckle up, because this is not just a story you watch, it's a story you feel. It's a story that asks you to look inside yourself and ask, what would I do? Stay right here, watch closely, and don't blink, because the moment you think you understand, the story will pull you deeper, revealing a dark reality that almost no one dares to face. And remember, you're not just a spectator. You are part of this journey, and your own experiences will shape how you see every heartbreaking choice that's about to be laid bare. This is a tale of love tested by fear, of desperation and regret, and it starts with a simple plea for help that was answered with silence. But what came next? Well, that's where the true story begins, and it's a twist you'll never forget. I end the weeks leading up to that fateful moment when the call came. Everything about this mother and daughter's lives seemed to be falling apart in ways no one could have predicted. The daughter, a woman in her late 20s, had been juggling a fragile balance between her demanding job, a complicated relationship with her boyfriend, and the weight of caring for her aging mother, who had been increasingly withdrawn and anxious. She wasn't the kind of person to ask for help, and even when she did, it was wrapped in layers of frustration and silence that made it almost impossible to understand what was really wrong. On the surface, everything appeared normal, maybe even stable. But beneath that veneer, cracks were forming. small fractures that grew wider with every passing day. The daughter's friends had noticed her growing exhaustion, how she seemed distracted, how her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes. Her boyfriend, who once seemed like a solid support, had recently become distant, caught up in his own troubles, leaving her feeling more alone than ever. It was a perfect storm of stress and isolation, the kind that can make even the strongest person question their own choices. Her mother, meanwhile, had a history that no one around her fully understood. She had lived a life marked by tragedy and resilience, carrying secrets that she buried deep and rarely spoke of. Neighbors whispered about strange noises and brief, unexplained absences, but no one had ever thought to intervene. After all, everyone has their own battles, and sometimes the signs are easy to miss or ignore. Lately, just when the daughter thought she might finally start putting the pieces together, the world around her seemed to close in with even more chilling obstacles that made the truth feel almost unreachable. The very evidence she had painstakingly gathered, texts, photos, even a recorded voicemail from her mother pleading for help, suddenly vanished without explanation. One night, after returning from a late shift, she found her apartment door slightly ajar, the place ransacked as if someone had been searching for something specific. Her phone, the device holding those crucial messages, was gone. Nothing else seemed touched, no valuable stolen, just those items tied directly to her mother's distress. It wasn't just theft, it felt like a warning. A message that said, "Stop digging." Then came the calls. At first, they were silent, no one on the other end, just heavy breathing. But soon the tone changed. A cold, unfamiliar voice warned her to stop asking questions, to forget everything she thought she knew about her mother's situation. The threats weren't empty. They carried the weight of someone who knew her, someone who was watching, waiting for her to slip up. It was as if a hidden enemy was guarding secrets darker than she ever imagined, and every step she took toward the truth only drew her deeper into danger. And just when the daughter felt the walls closing in, she stumbled across something from her mother's past that no one had ever mentioned, a secret she had kept hidden for decades, buried so deep it almost seemed unreal. An old journal, discovered tucked away in a forgotten drawer, revealed a story of betrayal that fractured a family long before the daughter was born. The entries spoke of a trust broken by someone close, a betrayal so severe it left scars no one dared speak about. Was this the key to understanding her mother's current fears? Had the past come back to haunt her in ways nobody expected? Or was it a distraction, a red herring planted to mislead anyone who tried to uncover the truth? The daughter found herself caught between wanting to believe the people she loved and fearing the shadows that lurked beneath their smiles. Even those closest to her began to look different. Friends who offered comfort suddenly seemed too eager to change the subject. The boyfriend who had once been her rock now appeared distant and secretive, and a new figure entered her life, a neighbor who claimed to want to help but whose motives were unclear, whose questions seemed probing and whose presence felt unsettling rather than reassuring. This suspicious ally showed up just as the daughter was trying to piece together the fragments of her mother's past with the terrifying events unfolding now. Was this person a genuine friend, someone who understood the depth of her mother's pain and wanted to protect her? Or was this a wolf in sheep's clothing, someone using the family's vulnerabilities for their own gain? Trust became a currency too precious and too risky to spend freely. The more she uncovered, the more dangerous it seemed to be. Phone lines were tapped, windows were broken, and even her car was vandalized, each act a clear signal that someone powerful was determined to keep the truth buried. The daughter's world had become a minefield, and one wrong move could shatter everything. As she stood at the edge of revelation, desperate for answers but surrounded by deception, she realized that the nightmare wasn't just about her mother's cries for help anymore. It was about survival. The deeper she dug, the more the past and present collided in ways she never could have imagined, forcing her to confront not only the secrets others hid, but also the darkest corners of her own heart. And then, just as she thought she might finally catch a break, a final twist changed everything. A piece of evidence she thought was lost forever suddenly resurfaced. delivered anonymously to her doorstep with no explanation and no indication of who had sent it. Inside was a photograph, blurry but unmistakable, her mother standing beside a man whose face was scratched out, a man no one had ever mentioned and whose connection to her mother was shrouded in mystery. Who was he? Why was he erased from every memory and every conversation? And more importantly, what did he have to do with the terrifying events that led to that desperate plea for help? The daughter stared at the photo, heart pounding, knowing this was the key she'd been searching for, but also knowing that with this new piece, the danger was far from over. Someone wanted to keep the truth hidden at all costs, and now, more than ever, she was caught in the crossfire of a secret that refused to stay buried. What happened next? That's the question we're about to answer, together. But before we dive deeper, I need you to hold on tight, because this story is far from over, and the next revelation will change everything you thought you knew. Just as the daughter was grappling with the disturbing photograph and the sudden resurgence of questions that had long been buried, a new thread began to unravel elsewhere, pulling another person into this tangled web of secrets and danger. It wasn't long before she learned that her estranged uncle, someone she had barely seen or spoken to in years, had received a nearly identical anonymous package. Inside his envelope was a different piece of evidence, one that seemed to directly contradict everything the daughter had started to believe about her mother's past. While she was staring at a scratched-out face in a blurry photograph, he held a faded letter, handwritten and addressed to their mother, filled with cryptic warnings and veiled accusations that hinted at a betrayal far darker and more complex than anyone expected. The letter suggested that their mother had been involved in something far more dangerous, something that not only shattered family ties but might also explain the recent threats and attacks. The revelation threw the daughter into a whirlwind of confusion, making her question everything she thought she knew about her family's history and everyone involved. What made this secondary storyline even more unsettling was how quickly it seemed to intersect with the present. The uncle, who had always kept his distance and stayed silent about the family's past, suddenly reemerged with a sense of urgency and fear. His calls became more frequent, but his words were cautious, loaded with hints rather than clear answers, as if he was afraid someone was listening. He warned the daughter to stop looking into the past, to let sleeping dogs lie, but his fear only made her more determined to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, the people she once trusted, friends, the suspicious neighbor, even the boyfriend, started to reveal cracks in their facades. Small inconsistencies in their stories, unexplained absences, and secretive behaviors made the daughter question their motives and wonder if they were involved in the conspiracy surrounding her mother. Was her boyfriend truly overwhelmed by his own problems, or was he hiding something darker? Was the neighbor really trying to help, or were they manipulating the situation for their own gain? And what about her uncle? Was his sudden reappearance a genuine plea for help or part of a larger, more dangerous game? The tension escalated further when a new piece of evidence surfaced that challenged the timeline the daughter had been piecing together. An old video, found hidden on a forgotten memory card, showed a conversation between her mother and a man who was neither the scratched-out figure in the photograph nor anyone the family had previously identified. The man's presence raised more questions than answers. Who was he? Why was he meeting with her mother in secret? And what did their discussion reveal about the events that led to her mother's desperate cries for help? The video hinted at a conspiracy that extended beyond family betrayals, touching on issues of trust, manipulation, and perhaps even criminal activity that no one expected. Suddenly, the daughter was no longer just uncovering a family mystery. She was stepping into a labyrinth of deception where every ally could be a foe, every truth could be a lie, and every discovery brought new dangers. This secondary storyline complicated the narrative in ways that made it impossible for anyone to take anything at face value. The daughter found herself caught between conflicting accounts and hidden agendas, unsure of who to trust or where to turn next. The stakes grew higher with every revelation, and the shadow of danger loomed larger as the people around her became entangled in secrets that could destroy them all. The mystery wasn't just about a mother begging for help anymore. It was about a family fighting to survive the weight of its own dark history, secrets that had been buried too long, and the chilling realization that some truths are more dangerous than lies. As the daughter stood at the crossroads of betrayal and revelation, one question burned brighter than all the rest. Who was really pulling the strings behind the scenes? And how far would they go to keep the truth from ever seeing the light of day? The answers are coming, but the road ahead is filled with shadows, and the next turn could change everything. Stay with me, because the story is far from over, and what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. As the days slipped by, the daughter's world seemed to darken with every passing moment, until one night, the reality of her situation hit her with terrifying clarity. She was no longer just an investigator in her mother's mystery. She was a target. It started with the subtle signs she had brushed off at first, a shadow lingering just beyond the edge of her vision when she left her apartment, the quiet footsteps echoing behind her on empty streets, a car she didn't recognize parked outside her workplace long after hours. But one evening, everything escalated in a way she couldn't ignore. Walking home after a late meeting with her uncle, she caught a glimpse of someone watching her from across the street, their face obscured by darkness. When she quickened her pace, so did they, until panic forced her to dart into a crowded cafe. Her heart pounded as she scanned the room, but the stranger was gone. That moment shattered her fragile sense of security. Someone was stalking her, someone who didn't want the truth to come out, someone who was willing to cross every line to keep her silent. The following day brought worse news that shattered what little calm she had left. Her closest friend, the one person she confided in most, suddenly disappeared without a trace. No calls, no texts, no signs of where they might have gone. Her friend had been visibly shaken in recent weeks, dropping cryptic hints about fearing for their safety, but she had dismissed it, too caught up in her own whirlwind of fear and confusion. Now, the absence of that person felt like a violent warning, a stark reminder that the darkness lurking around her was real and merciless. Every knock on the door, every unexpected call set her nerves on edge. Paranoia crept in like a relentless tide, turning every friendly smile into a possible threat and every familiar voice into a potential betrayer. She found herself double-checking locks multiple times a night, refusing to answer calls from unknown numbers and constantly looking over her shoulder, even in the supposed safety of her own home. The walls that once held memories of comfort now felt like they were closing in, suffocating her with the weight of unknown dangers. Her thoughts spiraled in the quiet moments between fear and sleepless nights. She wondered if she had been naive to think she could ever understand the full story. Was she just a pawn in a much larger game, caught between forces she didn't comprehend? The terrifying possibility that someone close to her might be orchestrating this nightmare gnawed at her relentlessly. She questioned the motives of her boyfriend, whose distance now felt more like avoidance. She questioned the neighbor, whose unsettling interest seemed to border on obsession. And even her uncle, whose warnings had become more urgent but cryptic, seemed like a man burdened by secrets so heavy he was barely holding on. Every relationship she had leaned on began to feel like a fragile thread, ready to snap under the weight of lies and danger. Then, as if to seal her growing sense of dread, she received a direct threat. A letter slipped under her door in the dead of night, written in hurried, jagged handwriting. It was simple, yet bone-chilling. Stop digging, or you'll disappear like the rest. No signature, no clues about who had sent it, but the message was clear and devastating. The daughter's hands trembled as she held the note, the cold reality settling deep in her chest that this was no longer just a mystery to solve. It was a fight for her life. The silence around her grew heavier, the shadows longer and more menacing. The chilling warning didn't just threaten her. It echoed through every corner of her mind, turning her own thoughts into a maze of fear and suspicion. She was trapped in a game where the rules were unknown, and the stakes were more than just answers. They were survival. With every moment, the daughter realized that the darkness she was chasing was closing in, that the people she once trusted might be the ones pulling the strings, and that the truth she so desperately sought might come at a price she wasn't sure she was willing to pay. The questions multiplied, the danger deepened, and the line between friend and foe blurred into an indistinguishable haze. What had started as a desperate plea from a mother now threatened to unravel an entire world, and the daughter was caught at its heart, alone, hunted, and more uncertain than ever about what awaited her in the shadows. The story continues, and with every heartbeat, the next revelation inches closer. But for now, the daughter's world is a terrifying waiting game, a haunting silence before a storm that promises to change everything. Just when the daughter thought she had grasped the depths of the mystery surrounding her mother's desperate plea for help, everything she believed shattered in an instant, sending shockwaves through her mind and heart that she still couldn't fully comprehend. It came unexpectedly during a late-night conversation with her uncle, the very person who had warned her to stop digging and whose motives had seemed clouded in suspicion. As they sat in his dimly lit living room, the air thick with unspoken truths, he pulled out a worn envelope, one she hadn't seen before, and revealed something so staggering it flipped the entire story on its head. The envelope contained a series of letters, not from the mother to some unknown enemy or mysterious figure as she had assumed, but letters from her mother addressed to the daughter herself, written years ago and hidden away as if waiting for the right moment to surface. What made these letters chilling wasn't just their existence, but their content. They spoke of a carefully constructed illusion, a family secret far more twisted than anyone had imagined. The mother wasn't simply a victim begging for help. She was part of a hidden world of manipulation and lies, and worse, she had been protecting the daughter all along from a truth so dangerous it could destroy them both. The letters detailed how the mother had orchestrated parts of the narrative to keep certain truths buried, creating red herrings to mislead anyone who tried to get too close. It was a revelation that made the daughter question not only her mother's past but her own memories and feelings. Had the mother's cries for help been real, or a carefully staged plea to protect her daughter from something much darker lurking just beneath the surface? The letters hinted at a betrayal so deep that it twisted family bonds into something unrecognizable and suggested that the disappearance of the daughter's friend, the anonymous threats, even the stalking, might be connected to secrets far beyond her immediate circle. Then came the most shocking twist of all. Her uncle confessed that he himself had been part of this elaborate web, caught between loyalty and guilt, trying to shield the daughter while battling his own demons. His warnings, his silence, even his sudden return to her life had been driven by fear not just for her safety, but for the consequences of revealing the truth. He admitted that the person truly orchestrating the threats and manipulating the shadows was someone they had never suspected, someone who had played a long, patient game of deception with the family's darkest secrets as their weapon. This person wasn't a stranger, a random enemy, or some outside figure. They were someone deeply embedded in the family's history, someone whose hidden agenda had quietly shaped the daughter's entire life without her knowing. As if that wasn't enough to unravel everything, the daughter uncovered a final, overlooked clue, a small, seemingly insignificant photograph tucked away in one of the letters, showing a blurred figure standing behind her mother in a place she recognized all too well, her childhood home. The figure's face was obscured, but the way they loomed in the background made her skin crawl, hinting that the real puppeteer had been watching from the shadows the entire time. Suddenly, every relationship she thought she could trust felt like a lie, every memory felt tainted, and the mystery that had drawn her in now felt like a trap designed to ensnare her forever. The daughter was left with a haunting question: how much of her life had been scripted by unseen hands, and what part was she really playing in this twisted story? The answer would come, but not without a price, and as the darkness closed in, one thing was clear. Nothing was as it seemed, and the greatest betrayal was still waiting to be uncovered. The weight of the revelation settled on her shoulders like a crushing storm, suffocating and relentless, and suddenly the daughter found herself standing at a crossroads where every path seemed laced with pain and impossible choices. The very people she had leaned on, those she once trusted with her life, now appeared as shadows in a game far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Her uncle's confession had torn down walls she'd built around her heart, but it also forced her to face a harrowing truth. If she wanted answers, if she wanted to unearth the full story behind her mother's desperate plea, she had to confront those closest to her, even if it meant shattering the fragile remnants of their relationships. The daughter's nights became a battleground of doubt and fear, torn between confronting the man she called family and protecting herself from the possibility of losing him forever. Each conversation was a knife's edge, every word loaded with the potential to ignite an emotional explosion that could either bring clarity or destroy everything. Then, just as she braced herself for this confrontation, the stakes soared higher when an anonymous message arrived with a cold, chilling ultimatum. Stop now or lose everything you love. The words weren't just a threat. They were a sinister demand that forced her to choose between her own safety and the truth she had vowed to uncover. The daughter wrestled with this cruel dilemma, feeling trapped in a tightening noose of fear and obligation. To walk away would mean abandoning the mystery, leaving the mother's plea unanswered, but to continue digging promised only greater danger, not just to herself, but to those around her. The emotional turmoil was unbearable. Every heartbeat echoed with a silent question. Was the truth worth the risk of losing everything she held dear? Could she survive the storm that was coming, or would the darkness swallow her whole? The tension mounted relentlessly as she weighed the unbearable cost of her pursuit against the burning need for answers that gnawed at her soul. Even as the daughter wrestled with these impossible choices, the people around her seemed to shift in unpredictable ways. Friends grew distant, their eyes clouded with secrets and fear. Allies whispered warnings that blurred the line between caution and betrayal. The daughter's world became a labyrinth of uncertainty, where every face concealed a potential threat and every word spoken might be a lie. She found herself questioning not only who to trust, but whether trust itself was a luxury she could afford. The emotional weight of her decisions pressed down with crushing intensity, and with every step deeper into the mystery, the daughter felt herself slipping further into a darkness that threatened to consume her entirely. The story wasn't just about uncovering a hidden past anymore. It had become a fight for survival, a test of her strength, courage, and the limits of love in the face of betrayal. The answers she sought were tantalizingly close, yet the path to them was shrouded in shadows that grew darker with every passing moment. As the daughter stood on the edge of this abyss, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever choice she made next, there would be no turning back. Just as the daughter braced herself for what she thought was the final confrontation, the ground shifted beneath her feet in a way that made everything she had endured feel like a mere prelude to something far more terrifying and far-reaching than she ever imagined. The conspiracy was no longer confined to a handful of family secrets or shadowy threats. It was a sprawling, tangled web that reached into the lives of dozens, maybe even hundreds, of people she had once believed were innocent or uninvolved. The truth exploded before her like a wildfire out of control, revealing that the danger wasn't just personal, it was systemic, a vast network of deception, lies, and betrayals that had been carefully cultivated and protected by people she thought were allies, friends, and even family. The chilling realization hit her with the force of a freight train. The stakes were higher than just her own survival, and the forces working against her were stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than she had ever dreamed. Amidst the chaos, the most gut-wrenching blow came from someone she had never suspected. A longtime friend who had been her confidant through the darkest hours suddenly revealed their own hidden agenda, their betrayal slicing through the daughter's trust like a blade. This person, the very one who had whispered words of comfort and support when she felt most alone, was entangled in the conspiracy from the start, playing a double game that had manipulated her every step. The shock of this betrayal was overwhelming, fueling a whirlwind of emotions that crashed inside her: confusion, anger, heartbreak, but most of all, an urgent sense of peril. The daughter realized that she was no longer just fighting for answers or justice. She was fighting for her life in a battle that had been raging far beyond her view. One where every move was watched, every ally could be a traitor, and every truth uncovered brought her closer to an unseen enemy ready to strike. The tension in her world skyrocketed as she raced against time, piecing together clues that led to hidden locations, encrypted messages, and secret meetings where the real architects of the conspiracy pulled strings with cold, calculated precision. The danger was palpable, stalking her every moment, and the pressure to act quickly was suffocating. She couldn't afford mistakes, not when the conspiracy was capable of destroying not only her but everyone she cared about. Yet in this dark storm, flashes of hope flickered, the possibility of exposing the truth, breaking the cycle of lies, and finally freeing herself from the invisible chains that had bound her for so long. But with each step closer to the truth, the shadows deepened, and the daughter knew that the coming showdown would demand everything she had: courage, wit, and a strength she hadn't yet fully realized. As the walls closed in and the world she thought she knew crumbled around her, one undeniable fact stood clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The night was thick with a suffocating silence as the daughter stepped into the dimly lit room where everything she had feared and hoped to uncover would finally collide. The air felt heavy, charged with the kind of tension that makes your skin crawl, a mix of dread and determination burning in her chest. Every step she took echoed like a drumbeat to a final reckoning, a reckoning that would unravel the twisted knots of betrayal, secrets, and lies that had haunted her family for years. Across the room stood the person who had orchestrated it all, the villain whose cold, calculating eyes held the answers she'd risked everything to find. The room was a cage, and within it, the daughter knew that words alone would not suffice. This confrontation would be raw, unfiltered, and brutal in ways that cut deeper than any weapon. It was a psychological battlefield, where the stakes weren't just about truth or justice, but survival and the shattering of everything she once believed was real. As they faced each other, the villain's calm, unnerving smile twisted the knife deeper, revealing truths that shattered her perceptions piece by piece. It was not just the mother's desperate plea for help that had been ignored. It was part of a larger scheme, a carefully crafted narrative designed to manipulate and control, hiding the real pain beneath layers of deceit. The daughter's heart pounded as the villain laid bare the motive: revenge, power, and an insatiable hunger to rewrite the past at any cost. But just as the daughter felt the crushing weight of hopelessness, a flicker of defiance surged through her veins. This was not the end, not yet. With every ounce of courage, she countered with questions, unraveling the villain's facade, forcing cracks to show in the carefully maintained mask of control. The tension spiraled upward in a pulse-pounding exchange, where every revelation felt like a blow, every confession a dagger aimed at her soul. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with unspoken accusations and the desperate need for closure. In this climactic moment, the daughter uncovered the final piece of the puzzle, a hidden recording, a confession buried beneath years of lies, exposing the full extent of the conspiracy and the villain's twisted game. The evidence was undeniable, shattering the villain's control and turning the tables in a flash of triumphant clarity. But just when it seemed the daughter would claim victory, the story twisted again in a way no one could have predicted. A new face appeared in the shadows, someone thought long gone, someone whose very presence threw everything into question and revealed that the conspiracy was even deeper and darker than anyone had dared imagine. That last, staggering twist left the daughter breathless, the room spinning with uncertainty and the brutal truth that the battle was far from over. The climax wasn't just a resolution, it was a powerful awakening, a stark reminder that in a world built on secrets and lies, trust is fragile, and the darkest shadows often hide where you least expect them. The daughter stood there, torn between relief and fear, victory and doubt, knowing that the path forward was uncertain, but that she was no longer alone in the fight. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers gripping their seats, hearts racing, desperate to unravel the next chapter in this unforgettable story. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, the daughter finally stood on the fragile ground between devastation and hope, her world forever changed but her spirit remarkably resilient. The tangled web of secrets and betrayals that had once seemed impenetrable had been unraveled, the truth exposed in all its painful, raw clarity. She had confronted the darkness head-on, unmasked the villain whose cruelty had haunted her family, and unearthed the hidden forces that had manipulated her life for years. Yet, As the dust settled and the glaring spotlight of justice shone on those responsible, there was no triumphant celebration, only a profound, bittersweet sense of closure. The answers she sought had come at a cost, a heavy toll paid in broken trust and lost innocence, and the scars left behind were a silent testament to the price of uncovering the truth. But within that pain, she found something unexpected, a flicker of peace, a quiet strength that whispered of healing and the possibility of rebuilding a future not defined by shadows, but by resilience and hope. Though the villain faced justice and the conspiracy's core had been dismantled, the story lingered on in the spaces between resolution and uncertainty. There were unanswered questions that hummed beneath the surface, subtle hints of hidden layers yet to be uncovered and forces still watching from the shadows. The appearance of that unexpected figure in the climax was more than a mere twist. It was a haunting reminder that in a world rife with secrets, no victory is ever absolute, and the past never truly lets go. The daughter's journey closed one chapter but left the door ajar for mysteries still waiting in the dark, urging viewers to ponder the fragility of trust, the complexity of human nature, and the enduring struggle between truth and deception. Her story wasn't just about a family torn apart by betrayal. It was a mirror held up to all of us, challenging us to face our own fears and secrets, and reminding us that sometimes the most profound battles happen not out in the open but within the hidden corners of the heart and mind. As the screen fades to the final scene, her silhouette walking into the sunrise, a symbol of hope tempered by experience, the lasting impact settles deep in the audience's soul. The daughter's tale resonates not just as a suspenseful mystery or a chilling true crime story, but as a human story of pain, courage, and the relentless quest for truth in a world that often prefers darkness. It leaves viewers with a stirring question echoing in their minds long after the video ends. How far would you go to uncover the truth, and at what cost? The answer, like the story itself, is never simple, but it is the journey through those complexities that makes this story unforgettable.